Support for this podcast is provided by Paradox, the conversational AI company helping global talent acquisition teams at Unilever, McDonald's, and CVS Health get recruiting work done faster. Let's face it, talent acquisition is full of boring administrative tasks that drag the hiring process down and create frustrating experiences for everyone. Paradox's AI assistant, Olivia, is shaking up that paradigm, automating things like applicant screening, interview scheduling, and candidate Q&A, so recruiters can spend more time with people, not software. Curious how Olivia can work for your team? Then visit paradox.ai to learn more.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Before we start the show this week, I want to tell you about an event that I'm hosting later in the month. The combination of technological disruption and the current economic uncertainty is causing all of us to think deeply about the future of talent acquisition. To help you cut through some of the noise out there around the future, I'm running a webinar looking at the road ahead for talent acquisition. It's taking place on Tuesday, April 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and a recording will be made available for everyone who registers. So don't worry if your calendar or time zone don't align to watch it live. You can register by going to bit.ly/Matt Alder. That's bit.ly/Matt Alder. Hi there, this is Matt Alder. Welcome to episode 511 of the Recruiting Future podcast. It's now 3 years since the pandemic changed many people's work trajectories. While some companies have returned to the office and others are desperately trying to, remote and hybrid work continue to be the norm for many organisations. So, putting aside noisy narratives and vested interests, trying to take us back to the pre-pandemic status quo, what are the actual benefits and challenges of a distributed workforce? Also, with the opening up of global talent pools, what can employers do to position themselves as an employer of choice in 2023? My guest this week is Sarah Fern, Chief People Officer at Velocity Global. Velocity Global has employees working remotely across 6 time zones and 27 countries. And Sarah has some valuable insights to share on the benefits and challenges of being a distributed employer. Hi, Sarah, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Matt.
An absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Please could you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Sarah Fern. I'm based in the UK and I'm the Chief People Officer at Velocity Global. Velocity Global help companies hire, employ and pay people anywhere in the world in 185 countries and legal entities and counting.
Fantastic stuff. And is your organisation a remote organisation as well? Do you have people all over the world or all over the country? How does it set up?
We are indeed, Matt. We are in 53 countries and growing, and we have a very healthy mix of people with no offices in their country. We have people who are traveling and working from anywhere. We have people who frequently go into one of our Upflex offices. So it's a really, really interesting mix around the globe across 6 continents and time zones.
That makes you the perfect person to answer these questions, because what I've noticed when it comes to the way that conversations about hybrid working and remote working happen, we seem to be stuck in this rut of a debate about people going back to the office and, hybrid's amazing or hybrid's bad, or remote's amazing, remote's bad. And there just seems to be a kind of a desperate move to restore the previous state of status quo, and not as much debate as there should be about, the advantages and the challenges of hybrid and remote working. So talk us through, from your perspective in terms of the way your company works and what your company does, what opportunities do remote and hybrid work offer employers and employees?
I love that question. And, as you say, Matt, there's been so much debate. It almost feels like there's been a collision and it's almost a war that's sort of raging between employers and employees and different groups. And, I think the opportunities are, they're there. The opportunities are huge. And when I look at, the way we work around the globe across 6 different time zones and continents, the opportunities really, are there for employers where you have access to the best talent across the world, no matter where they are. You might be expanding your group and you're looking for the best project manager anywhere. Who is to say that best project manager, the most fantastic project manager lives within 5 miles of where you happen to be based? And so even that idea of, everyone has to be in one place all the time and everyone has to gather in one place, it doesn't make sense for businesses. It doesn't make sense for, when you're looking for the best person. And so when you have the globe at your disposal and you can look for the best project manager anywhere on the planet, you have to have that trust. You have to have that leadership style as well, where you go, actually, it doesn't matter where they are. I need the best quality person. I need the best skill set. I want that person to do A and B, and that's all I care about. And that ultimately challenges the beliefs of, I've got to sit somewhere for 8 hours to be seen to be successful. I've got to sit somewhere for 8 hours so that my boss thinks I'm productive. And so that idea of, I need to be visible, I need to be, in someone's face so that they give me a promotion, it becomes nonsense. And so the opportunities really are here for people to say, look, you're employing me to do X, I'm doing X. When I do it and how I do it, you may not care so much about. And I think the good leaders have understood that. And so I think for me, when I think about hybrid and remote, I think it's also about leadership, Matt, because we've heard this, the kind of social media and the press is all over this, the mandate to come back into the office so that we can see what you're doing, so we can control you, we can see whether you're productive, we can make sure that you're not, going jogging or going to the gym 3 times a day and then walking your dog 5 times a day. We want to see what you're doing. But actually, that is not how good work happens, right? That is not how high-performing work gets done. And so that idea of, you've got to be visible, it's just really disappeared when you look at the really amazing practices that, the opportunities that remote and hybrid have to offer.
If we move away from that presenteeism argument, because, as you say, in many cases, it's a non-argument when you look at some of the, the great things that are happening. What are the genuine challenges in hybrid and remote working? What are the challenges that you face? What are the things that employers should be really working through to get the most out of this new world of work we find ourselves in?
There are plenty of challenges. I will say that. I truly believe that we need to have the real conversations versus the kind of textbook. This is the best practice handbook, and if you do it like that, you'll be amazing. The challenges. If I look at my own team, we are in 27 countries across all different time zones, and so, you really have to rethink how you're going to engage with that team, how you're going to reach that team, how you're going to speak to that team, because that team may never be awake when you're awake. So the time zones may make it even impossible to cross paths. And so, you'll have some technology tools, you'll have, some understanding with the team on, how work gets done. But the challenges are also the opportunities. And, when people feel trusted and, exactly what is expected of you, exactly what the outcome is going to be that, you've been asked to produce, you can own that piece. You can be accountable for that piece of work, and where to find your boss, where to find your co-workers, if you have questions, if you need to, hop on a call to talk something through. And so I think it is all about mindset. Yes, they are challenges. We've talked about time zones a little bit. It might be something different, right? It might be loneliness. It might be the feeling of being disconnected. It might be the feeling of actually, it's just me here, I'm expected to do this, but actually I don't know how to do it. I need the help from someone else, but I don't know who that someone else is because, I can't see them. I can't bump into them in the office. I don't know who they are. And so for organizations, very much from the moment when you onboard someone right through the entire employee journey, it's really, really important that you give them the right setup, the right tools, the right infrastructure. And, you show them where they can find information. You let them know, where they can go to. Maybe they have a buddy as part of the journey when they're here, where you say, look, if you need anything, there's someone here who's gone through that very same journey or a similar journey, they are available in your time zone. So you really need to think about, what are the potential kind of day-to-day, situations that person may find themselves in, and then go, okay, how do we solve that? And you have to listen. The employee has probably gone through some frustrations. They probably know exactly what the challenges are. Just ask them. You don't have to make it up. You don't have to read a book or talk to someone else about, someone else's challenges. You can say, what can I do for you? What would be helpful? What is it you need so you can get this piece of work done? And you talk about the challenges of remote work. Another one is, the kind of always on culture, right? So you might work for an American company and, your time zones are very different. And, you are now finding yourself, sitting there every evening, every night working because your boss is awake or the majority of your team are awake. And, all the data, Matt, that I've seen over the last few years, burnout is ripe, overwhelm, overwork, stress, people work more hours. And this is interesting. I want to, you can't see my hand, but I want to put my hand up at this moment and go, remote workers are not lazy. Remote workers, if you look at the data, work a lot more hours. There's usually no commute. There's usually no distraction like you'd have in the office, and there's a lot of work that takes place. And so how do we as companies and how do we as employees, how do we come together and understand and recognize that challenge? That's a huge challenge. And what are the conversations we're going to have? What are the things we're going to put into place? Because again, you might go, I don't mind if my person overworks, they're doing a good job and, they're really productive. Actually, they're not going to be productive 100%, for the next few years. Their productivity is going to dip and dip and dip. And so it is something we've got to talk about. It's something we've got to think about because, if you are in an office with them or you see them, you might be able to send them home, right? You might be able to go, hey, we've had a long day now, let's go home. At home, you don't know. You don't know what that person is up to. You don't know whether that person gets up, goes into their laptop, and maybe stays on their laptop until the end of the evening. And we've seen that. I have a lot of data points to suggest that is what happens with a lot of people, not to be confused with the people who are not productive at work, working from home or working remotely. But there's a lot of work that takes place, and we've got to watch that. We've got to understand, the severe impact that will have on an employee's health, on an employee's ability to get good work done.
I want to come back to that in a second and talk more about culture and how you can really kind of make people thrive in that kind of environment. Before we do, I just want to literally just pick up on the point that you made earlier about tapping into this global pool of talent. If you want to recruit the best project manager for the job that you have in the world, this gives you the opportunity to do it. How do organizations who want to do that, how do they need to think differently about recruiting? Because obviously they're going to have to stand out as an employer across global markets of talent. They can't use their office as a selling point or a way of describing their culture. What can employers do to kind of really stand out and be that global employer of choice?
I love that question, Matt. And, I think the answer is somewhere where, we've got to look at everything we've got here, whether it's a policy, whether it's a playbook, a handbook, the benefits, really look at, why should they join us? What makes us different? What makes us special? And the good companies out there these days, they are really, personalizing and, putting stuff into place that actually matters to someone. So if you think about benefits, for example, you're absolutely right that the free food or the fresh food or the pizza in an office, isn't relevant anymore. And so what are the benefits that matter to people? And, at Velocity Global, I look back at the last few years and we've had a variety of benefits that we've tried and have been really successful. Last year, we made available the services of a resilience coach to everyone in the company. It's hugely successful. We also had a travel fund program in place that enabled employees on their anniversary to, take an amount of money and, travel and work from anywhere. These are just two small examples. It could be something very, very different. But really, as an employer, think about, in this remote setup, what do my employees cherish, value, benefit from? And you don't know the answer. So you also need to have the ability, to maybe give them an amount of money and say, look, I give you this amount of money. I want you to do X and Y. You choose the provider, you choose the nature of the benefit. So we're getting very, very creative, right? When we think about, why people come to a company, it is getting very, very creative when you look out there. And, the kind of the value proposition as you say, Matt, has really changed beyond recognition. The other thing, of course, I've got to say it, I'm a big proponent of it. This is how we work at Velocity Global. This is how the majority of our clients work. It's that nature of working anywhere. It's that flexibility. And a lot of people look for that. So I have a data point. I think it was summer last year. We had at one point, let me say, 120 vacancies, on the market. And we had over 100,000 applicants and people flocking to the website and checking us out. And, the overriding theme here was the flexibility. It was the nature or the ability, the opportunity to work anywhere, when a lot of the employers out there were demanding or mandating the return to the office. When that collision, started to really kind of, come full swing, where people said, actually, I've moved away. I cannot, I'm not able to move back. I don't want to, I want you to trust me, employer. I've been doing this for some time, or maybe I've moved back to my home country, or, I've just grabbed the opportunity and I've gone somewhere else and I don't want that to be taken away again. And so that huge appetite, Matt, for people to choose their location. And if you go back to that project manager example, I'm sitting here, I'm looking for the best project manager in the world. I don't mind where they come from. Right? If I have the ability to employ anywhere in the world, what I care about is, do they have the right skill set? Do they have the ability to complete this project for me? And everything else becomes more or less irrelevant. And so when you turn that around, the question is, what are people looking for? How do we attract global talent? It is really, by giving those flexibilities, by giving that freedom. And, also think about, you mentioned the global audience, a global audience may have a different language, might articulate values in a different way. And so really, as an employer or as a, recruiter or HR professional, look at your job descriptions. How are you selling the role? How are you selling the company? What's the impact the people that you're looking to attract can make at the company? And that all feeds into your new value proposition. What can you expect here? So, I'd be surprised if there is anyone who can just copy and paste what they've always done. I think it does require a complete rethink. And that's challenging, right? You sit there and you go, okay, I want to make it sound fancy, but, I don't know what to say. It's challenging. But if you can get through that, really question yourself, what do we have to offer here? I think that's when the magic happens.
And I suppose tying all of that together in terms of, how you talk about the benefits and the organization, and also dealing with the challenges of remote and hybrid. talk to us a little bit more about culture. How do you enable people to thrive in this type of organisation?
Yes, and I welcome the question. And let me say this, and the people I work with, they know this because I say this frequently. We are all culture, Matt. Every single one of us is a culture carrier. And the reason why I say that and why I believe that is when you are in a hybrid or a remote or asynchronous work setup, it's really, really difficult, to define or to direct or to control culture. You might be in an office, you might have the sense that you are in control of the culture. You probably not, but you might have that sense. When you are in a remote work setup, you have no sense of control as it relates to the culture ever. And so what that means is for companies, for leaders, for CEOs, for people teams, is you've got to be very intentional about the stories you share, the narratives, how you articulate what we do as a company, and, the values, because someone gets up in the morning and, they've never met any of their teammates and they work in a silo or work in isolation. How on earth are you going to foster a positive culture there? And so you need some really cool systems. You need platforms that enable people to meet. You need that sense of, togetherness, belonging. You need that sense of community. And you need really, really good leaders that don't leave you alone, that don't allow silos, that really drive collaboration, teamwork, being together, driving impact. That, to me, all of that is culture. And I have a choice. I wake up in the morning and I have a choice, what I contribute towards that culture. And I think it's really important to say that, because in a remote setup, the culture and the attitude and the behaviors of every single person, that is what makes up the culture. And, in that sense, you also have a duty to make sure that people who are working with you, they're living that. And so, if someone isn't aligned with that, you take the same action that you would take in an office, right? You try and figure that out, because there's this famous quote that says your company is as good as the kind of worst behavior that we tolerate, and that is also true remotely. So make no mistake, the challenges are the same. It's a little bit more tricky to deal with that and to identify it, but ultimately it is about being intentional. It's about being having really, really good leaders and, leading by example.
Final question for you. Just looking to the future. So if we go sort of 3, 4, 5 years into the future, how do you think we're going to be talking about the future of work then? What's next after this evolution that we're going through?
It's a good question. I don't think we're done with this evolution. I think it's easy to think that we are, but there's a lot of, lots of different trends, lots of collisions happening. And, I would say that the future of work, I think, is that of freedom. When I think of, anyone, anywhere, anyhow, you can be in Ghana or in Kenya or in Norway or in Japan, and you have access to the same job opportunities that someone has who might be located in San Francisco, California. And, I think we're moving that way, but the idea is still very radical. Anyone, anywhere, anyhow. We're not even 5% there, Matt. And so for me, the future is about choice, the future is about freedom, the future is about trust, and the future is about getting work done rather than appearing to get work done. All of those are really radical concepts. We may have been talking about them for 2 or 3 years, but we're not done yet.
Absolutely. So much work still to do. Sarah, thank you very much for talking to me.
It's been a pleasure, Matt. Thank you.
My thanks to Sarah. And a quick reminder that you can register for my webinar on navigating the future for talent acquisition at bit.ly/Matt Alder. You can subscribe to this podcast in Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or via your podcasting app of choice. Please also follow the show on Instagram. You can find us by searching for Recruiting Future. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast. and get the inside track about everything that's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.
This is my show.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We out.